Hello. Welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I'm your host, Todd Rennebaum. And hey, hit subscribe and like and that bell and all that stuff you're supposed to do. On this episode, I'm speaking with Terra Newell, and her story was turned into a series. There was documentaries. There was all types of things about it. You may have heard of Dirty John. That's her story. She literally killed the guy that was Dirty John. So anyway, on Netflix there's a show. I mean, it's acted, but it's all about her story. Her mother was dating him and then got married to him. Terra ended up killing him. Just listen to the episode. It's a fascinating story, and yeah, just do that. So without further ado, I give you Terra Newell. Can you describe a little bit about your story and how, why you're kind of a celebrity now?
Okay. Yes. So my mom married a psychopath, didn't know he was a psychopath. She ended up leaving him and he ended up coming after me and attacking me. And I was able to defend myself and get the knife from him, from a knife attack, basically. And I killed him in self-defense. And it all got turned into a podcast, a story on Dateline, a TV series on Bravo, and just kind of blew up. And it was kind of crazy because, the victim doesn't normally come out winning in these situations. So I think that it really just brought a light to the situation and how this happens to so many women and how so many people are just conned.
So why do you think your story in particular really grabbed the nation or the world even?
So I think it was, there's this family from Orange County, that's a wealthier region. And a lot of stories are actually drawn from Orange County because of this wealthy society that we're kind of in down here. And it's just a different niche, and it's very wealthy. There's lots of large houses and stuff. And my mom was a successful interior designer, and this guy came into her life, and it was just kind of shocking how a woman who has everything going for her could get into this kind of relationship. And so it kind of created this awareness of like these, and I hate to use the word Dirty John because that is my attacker's name. It is not someone that you just call a con artist. It's not someone that you call that pulls one over. These are con artists. These are narcissists. These are people that are abusing other people. It's not fair to call them Dirty Johns to me.
So that nickname has stuck for like other con artists?
Yes. So the name Dirty John, like I get in my inbox on the daily, and I want women to know this and men to know this also. Like, it doesn't really make me feel good to hear that you have been with a Dirty John, because that has been my story, my case. And, there are people that I do share my story with because he has terrorized so many people, and it's fair for those people to call him by that name. But, when you're in it and you're in a con artist situation, you have to be aware that I had to kill this guy, and I don't have to kill every con artist. So it's like, it's different to me. And especially since he was a psychopath. And when you say you're with a Dirty John, I'm like thinking, okay, this is a psychopath. This person tried to kill me. But then you're telling me, and you're absolutely valid to have these feelings, but you need to be like, I was in a toxic relationship. This person was so toxic. This person manipulated me. This person love bombed me, and call it what it is rather than calling it my abuser's name.
Right. Yeah. I can imagine that's tough to hear because like, no, you're not with a Dirty John. My mom was with a dirty John, the dirty John.
Yeah. And Tanya was, and, those women weren't. And we need to, call people what they are, abusers and con artists, manipulators.
Yeah. So when did you realize that John was a real, lack of a better term, piece of shit?
So before I even met him, I was getting little calls from my sister being like, I hate this guy. Mom's with this guy. I just don't like him. And just saying her feelings towards him. And so I knew that my sister has had problems with men in my mom's past before, and we have been super critical towards them. So I wanted to kind of take the step back and be like, well, I want to go in it with an open mind. And so I went into it and I went down to meet him. My mom was moving into her place on Balboa. And I was with my ex-boyfriend and we brought down our 3 dogs at the time. And just his vibes were not the most friendly vibes, but he was living with my mom and he claimed that he loved dogs and stuff, but he didn't want to interact with me and stuff. So I started just to pick up on these feelings that he hated me, he didn't want me. And it's kind of weird because when you're saying that, when you're first meeting someone, people are thinking she's a little out of tune, when I'm actually very in tune. I just didn't know how to regulate my emotions as best as I do now. Right. So, it was, and also too, when you're yelling and you're telling people these things in a different tone, there's actually a part of the eardrum that closes off to the yelling. So you're not able to actually fully hear someone when they're yelling at you. So, without me saying this in the kindest way, my mom really wasn't able to see hey, something's not right here. And so she wasn't able to lean into her own intuition, where I had my intuition going crazy and I just didn't know how to share what was happening.
Was this the first real big test of your intuition, or did you know you had good intuition before this event?
I say it was a test of my intuition because I was never taught to go off of my intuition, even though as human beings, we are highly intuitive. And, if you think about dogs, they have, we have more cells in our stomach than a dog has in its entire body. So if you think about how intuitive dogs are, we actually have a lot more intuition than that. So it's time to lean into this intuition. And I feel like there's so many things that kind of shame it. If you grew up super religious, at least I did, I was kind of taught not to lean into these visions or whatever, because they were something from the devil. And for my case, that's not true. I think it's God giving me this gift and whatnot. But there's so much shame around intuition, especially back in the 90s and whatnot, where now we're kind of coming and promoting that hey, we are intuitive beings. It doesn't mean that we're all psychics and stuff, but we're intuitive beings. And we need to really tune into our bodies and to our ancestors, because our bodies are amazing and our bodies are here to survive. And it's funny because, well, it's not funny, but if there's a threat or if you're on stage or anything, your body is telling you hey, something is not normal in this moment. So our bodies are just amazing, intuitive souls.
Well, if intuition's for the devil, yours actually may perhaps saved you from the devil. Right?
Yeah, that is true.
And I guess another thing that may have set off some red flags is their relationship was not, it was maybe a couple months before they moved in together and started getting married and stuff.
Yes. So their relationship, he moved in, but my mom, it was weird. My mom didn't really let me know he moved in, or she didn't know. It was like he just moved in and it happened. And okay, yes. So my mom wasn't really aware that he moved in, but then I kind of felt she did know. It was just kind of this limbo. So I just was unaware of like what she was aware of, if that makes sense. But he ended
Right.
up just moving in into this new place in Balboa where my mom got, because he couldn't be at the other apartment because my sister lived there and my sister had issues with him.
Hmm. It makes me wonder if your mom wasn't telling you guys stuff, maybe her intuition was working because she knew, this is probably not a good thing if I'm not going to tell my daughters about it. So,
Yeah.
but you can
Well,
shut down your intuition.
the hard thing with intuition is when it's been shut off for so long and you've been told not to listen to it. It's like, how do you decipher what's true and what's not? And then also, I have a lot of clients where I talk to what is a trauma like response and what is intuition.
Mm.
Because sometimes we get into these situations where we start writing off every single guy, every single thing they do. And then I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. Is this really a red flag? Is this your intuition? Or is this literally just a trauma response of you not wanting to let that person into your life and be vulnerable and be at that place where you feel you should be? And we have to kind of decipher and go through like, okay, I did this, I did that, and did that. That doesn't really align with intuition. It aligns more so with my past traumas. Or, this isn't a red flag. This isn't a red flag. This isn't a red flag. I'm leaning into my trauma.
Right. I see. It's a fine line then, is it? Or people just hope it's intuition, but it's actually a trauma response?
So, well, it's so hard to say because, especially if you've been living in trauma and in a lot of these past toxic relationships,
Mm.
you have to kind of go through the therapy. And I tell everyone that when they're in a toxic relationship and they get out of that toxic relationship, they have to go about it as if it were addiction, and they have to go kind of through like their 12-step program of releasing and getting away with it, because they have to see what they were attached to in the first place.
Gotcha.
So I think that a lot of times people bring their triggers and not decipher through the red flags and intuition and stuff, if that makes sense. So me as a coach, that's really what I try to work with my clients, and then also work with the nervous system, because our nervous systems are even jacked up because we've been living in fight or flight mode for forever with these toxic people. So it's like relearning how to be a human in a different environment.
Right. Gotcha. So it's a bit like PTSD then, really. You got this PTSD from this crappy relationship and you're treating every relationship like that crappy one.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're so scared that it's going to turn into another crappy relationship that you end up sabotaging it because of these kind of behavioral patterns or these thriving survival mode.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. How or did you resent your mom at the time because she kind of pushed you away? He put pressure on her to, have some distance between you and your sister?
definitely during that time when my mom was with him, there was this conflict of me feeling unwanted by her and me feeling as if I was losing my mom. And I don't feel like I don't think there was resentment during that time at all. I think maybe there was resentment against John, if anything, but never my mom, because well, first of all, I was in a toxic relationship. I got hit by a car by this one guy and stuff. So, and I went back to situations like that. So,
What, your boyfriend hit you with a car?
well, he was like, not technically ever my boyfriend because we were always in this limbo, but it was this weird toxic relationship. And I ended up, well, he was on meth and stuff, and I didn't know this. And I got in the car with him, and then, well, it's a big story and stuff. I'll talk about it in my book when it comes out one day. I'm working on a book, but got to get it sold and everything. But it will be in there because there's a lot more details to it and whatnot. But I was in a toxic relationship with him, and I was never technically his girlfriend, but it was like this weird limbo thing where he hung out with me every single day. And then I just had love and I had empathy for him. And today that person has actually passed away. So I'm able to give more details about it, but I had empathy for him and I understood what it was like to be in a toxic relationship. So I really had a lot of empathy for my mom and a lot of understanding for her.
I see. So instead of resentment, you almost, you could relate to her. And so you gave empathy. Gotcha.
Yeah. Because, her toxic relationships, the dynamic that she had in those is the dynamic I repeated in some of mine. So, monkey see, monkey do. And how could I not relate to someone that I learned these behaviors from? And, she probably learned these behaviors from her mom, and her mom learned these behaviors from her mom. And it's like this ongoing generational cycle, but now we're breaking that cycle.
Right. Well, that's good. I feel I'm sure people that are listening have heard me talk about this a million times and they're tired of it, but I just want you to know that I feel the same way about me in my life. I'm in recovery of addiction and anxiety and all types of stuff. And it's been hard. I think it's also generational. So,
Yeah.
And partly that's why I do this podcast, is so others can relate and stuff. And so, yeah, it's hard to do, but it feels good to maybe nip this trauma in the bud that's been going on for generations. So yes. Good on you.
Thank you.
Is your mom proud of what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think so. And, I'm proud of what she's doing even too, because there's awareness in her traits that have been toxic. And she's really putting forth the energy to fix those toxic traits with herself too.
Perfect. So there's 2 generations healing. Yeah. Past generation. So how were you able to fight him off? Like, he was a bigger man with a knife. You're a smaller girl with no knife.
There's a lot of factors that I think went into that day of me being able to survive. I think that first, it really helps me watching The Walking Dead and watching all those criminal shows, because I really had that underlying education of how to hold a knife, how to defend someone with actually doing the work. And then it's like monkey see, monkey do. And you don't I just look back to studies where, and I'm so sorry, I'll close this. But there are studies that like show that what children watch on TV like affects their lives and stuff. And that is absolutely true. It doesn't mean that you go and you fight zombies every day, but maybe in a circumstance like mine, or, you know, maybe if they did have a smaller limbic system in their brain, they might be prone to want to do these things that are on TV and learn these behaviors. But unless you have the empathy, you don't really pick that up. And instead you just learn like, okay, you learn the factors about serial killers. If you watch like NCIS, or if you watch CSI, you learned about all the cool, interesting things that they use to catch these killers. And then if you watch Dexter, you learn how to kind of be a serial killer.
That's true.
But you don't actually do it unless you're in my situation. And you absolutely have to defend yourself.
Right. So if that's the case, then my son who plays Grand Theft Auto, he's probably going to be very good at stealing cars and shooting sex workers and selling drugs.
You know, if it comes to apocalyptic state, you know, he might got it. He can get you the car, you know. But, you know, unless it comes to that, I don't promote that.
Okay. I'll tell him to stay cool.
Which I'm sure he probably will, because I don't think that, you know, he would be inclined to do those things. Hopefully not, right?
Right. Well, we live in a small town in Canada too, so if he stole a car, everyone would know it was him anyway. So not like Los Santos.
Yeah, he would get lots of shame from the neighbors.
That's right. Like, oh, Jack's stealing our car again.
He's been watching that Grand Theft Auto.
Well, if he's not careful, maybe they play Grand Theft Auto and they'd shoot him first. So
that's true.
There's that. You know? So sorry, that was a little sidetrack there. After the dust settled, like, how did you feel? Was it gratitude that you were able to get away? Was it shame and guilt that you took his life? Or was it, you know, like, I have no idea. Like, I can't even fathom what was going through your mind.
So after everything happened and his death kind of settled and everything, I was in a state of shock. I didn't know. I wanted everybody to think I was okay. I wanted everybody just to be okay. But I went through this huge traumatic experience. So I really had to process all the emotions that were coming at me. And at first, it was like this initial shock where I wanted everybody to think I was okay. I wanted them to be okay. And then it went into like these fits of rage and triggers. And it's like you feel like you're losing control of everything. And then, you know, going into the next step is like having that understanding of what's happening in that moment and learning, and then so that you could like grow and work on it. And so I really had to process a lot of stuff after everything, because I did feel guilt for killing him. I did feel shame. I just never wanted to kill someone. And to take a life is a huge thing, because when you take a life, there's so many things that are connected to that life. Like there's, you know, he had daughters, and I'm so thankful that his daughters gave me that grace, and they could have resented me for, you know, doing what I had to do. So there was a lot of processing.
And I guess that's what PTSD is all about, really.
Yeah, well, I had a different, you know, there's so many different forms of PTSD. There's like complex PTSD. What I had was like a combative PTSD, like war veterans, although I wasn't, and I said I wasn't living in it for so long, but I actually was living in being stalked and stuff. And that was like being out. I don't want to compare it to Afghanistan because I haven't been out there, but it's like maybe being like 1 or 2 days in Afghanistan and killing one person, but not killing like 50, or not knowing how many people you killed because you're just shooting and you don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really pretty much impossible to compare trauma and pain. So I'm sure you can use Afghanistan as an example and no one will get offended.
Well, I don't want to discount the people that have been in Afghanistan. And right. I know that I've had friends that where I've been able to relate to them in this aspect, where they told me, they're like, Tara, I've just had a shot, like shoot. I don't know how many people I killed. I don't know how many kids I killed. I don't know what I killed, but I've killed. Right. And I hate to laugh, but it's like, that is the brutal reality sometimes of it. And that's what that person has to accept.
Mm-hmm. People actually came and thanked you, like including like his ex-wife and his sisters and stuff. Like, how did you look? Were you grateful for that, or was it like, I don't know, I mean, like you said, you don't want to take a life. Pardon me?
I was very grateful for that because it validated me taking his life. And I saw the harmful effect that he brought to everyone. And so it definitely did help. I just wish that, like, when everybody kind of sees this first initial shock and happen, like, they think about, you know, me in that circumstance. And then, you know, as the story begins to blow up more, like, people start to be more in their own ways and they just want their story to be shown and shared. So I think, like, there was a lot of like, oh, this is my story. This is my story. And, you know, it is like a lot of people's stories in a way, but I was the person that didn't ask for this to happen. I was the person that didn't engage with him. I was the person that told my mom to stay away from him. And I was the person that got stabbed and I could have gotten killed.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you actually suffered physical injuries too. Or like, yeah, it wasn't like you just took the knife away and used it on him. Like, he was stabbing you. Yeah. Yeah, that would be very traumatic.
I want people to know that, like, yes, there's story to this, but at the end of the day, like, my story should be told. And that's why I feel like I should get my book out. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Hey, there's nothing wrong with writing a book. I wrote one myself. It's a kid's book, though. Sometimes Daddy cries. Anyway, I'll just throw a plug for my own book in my own show there. Do you have a name? Do you have a name for your book yet?
So I'm waiting to sell it. And then I have a few ideas, but I can't really like say them out loud because, hey, you never know if someone wants to steal my story title. And then it gets turned into something. So, you know, I have to like be careful of what I do say. But I hope it will be a good one.
It's not a coloring book, is it?
No, definitely not. And I don't think it's a book to like give your children either.
Right.
Unless they're going through a really difficult time and they're like, well, you went through trauma. Here you go.
Right. Or, I mean, you could give it to your children if you're dating a real piece of shit. And then.
Yeah, but then see, there's part of the child's brain that isn't able to disconnect from certain things from like their mother or father figures.
Even as adults?
No, I believe there's
adult children.
No, their brain change. Like there's a certain time. I don't know when. I think it's like around the There's like the stage, the teen stage. Your brain starts to separate from your parents a little
Mm,
bit more, and you're able to kind of. It's just like how we evolve, you're at your
hmm.
teenage stage, you have to be more independent, start like learning to be an adult a little bit and start to separate from your parents. Around that stage is actually when you begin to like have those thoughts, so maybe my parent wasn't perfect and stuff.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So once you hit that stage, you can get your kid the book.
Yes, that's a perfect stage. Yes, because then they are not going to want to please mommy. They're able to step outside their own zone and think for themselves.
Is that your dog?
Yeah, sorry.
I thought my beard was rubbing the microphone for a second. How many dogs do you have?
Well, this one's my mom's. I'm watching her dog right
Oh,
now. I have just Dixon wherever he's at.
oh, I see. Okay. Do you gotta use your dog as an emotional support dog at times?
So I mean, there's certain situations where he definitely is a comfort to me, but he is not trained like Cash was. Cash was trained to like come up and regulate my nervous system and just lay on me. Where Dixon, he's also 8 months. So he
Oh,
still has that puppy energy and he doesn't necessarily know, hey, mom needs me to calm her down right now. Huh.
Cash is a very Orange County kind of dog name.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
I thought it was like I when I went to Texas, I saw a lot more Cashes there.
Well, I guess that's for a different reason. That's
Yeah.
Johnny Cash,
Yeah.
or did you name him for like money cash?
So in all honesty, my ex and I were stoners, so we named him after a cash bowl.
Well, thanks for the honesty. So, do you still go to therapy for, well, not just this, but for anything, I guess?
Yes, I go to therapy. Right now I'm in therapy once a week because I'm going back for EMDR therapy. I have a few more childhood traumas that came up that kind of came into my memory age 29. So I have to process through those now.
Hmm.
And I'm learning how to cope and put that into effect in my own life because it started to affect my relationships in ways. And now I have to get a hold on that.
Hmm. Can you explain EMDR therapy a bit?
So EMDR therapy is eye movement desensitization. I can never say this part right. Desensitization, repetition, and it's basically you go through your trauma, and you have like either these tappers, you have like a finger going back and forth, where you're able to process through your trauma and stay in the present moment, where it creates this bilateral effect with the brain. And it really helps you kind of rewire your brain as you process your trauma.
Interesting. I don't quite get it, but interesting.
Yeah, well, when you go into EMDR, one of the things that I think is crazy, and this is what a lot of my clients say is when they go into EMDR too, is that everything is interconnected.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
it's like you'll start off with like a trauma here, and then it will go to that trauma, and it'll go to another trauma. And then you're like, oh, wait. And then you just connect the dots.
Oh, okay. And so do you, like you said, you have clients, you also offer EMDR therapy to your clients?
So I'm not a licensed EMDR therapist, so
Oh,
I don't offer that to my clients, but I
okay.
definitely coach them through when they're going through that time or if they need that space. And then I do guided meditations that could be kind of similar to EMDR.
Hmm.
However, I am not a therapist, and it's not technically EMDR, it's a guided meditation, but it helps you lean more into your trauma where you're able to go deeper, and it still helps you connect the dots. But EMDR is just like, it's magic. But when you go into EMDR therapy, prepared to be raw.
Right. So you're considered a life coach then?
Yes, I'm a life coach.
Okay. And you also have a course on toxic relationships?
Yes, so I have 2 courses right now that are starting in May. I have No More Toxic Dating. That's a 5-week workshop. And then I also have a trauma workshop that's a 5-week workshop also. And I think it's a lot of fun because we do 5 live calls, but then we have homework each week that we go through. And you really learn about your nervous system. You learn about your relationship patterns, your generational patterns, and everything. I think it's just really great start, or it's like the next step if you've been in your healing process and you want to know more. I think it's creates a lot of awareness and gets you to the right steps and gives you the right tools to move forward in your healing process.
Okay. So it's not so much about not dating toxic men. It's more about letting go of a past toxic relationship and moving forward.
So I hope that I will teach you to avoid these factors in the next relationship, but I can't guarantee that you're not going to go to the next relationship and it's not going to be toxic, because I'm not going to be right by your side telling you, hey, that's not a good one.
Yeah. Standing there with a knife ready to pounce again.
Well, I hope that's never the case. I'm actually not a very, I'm actually a very like calm person.
Yeah. I got that from the many interviews I've seen you in, and because I didn't watch the show, but I listened to the podcast, and it's like, yeah, you just seem like the most gentle, sweetest lady on earth, and then, but yet your body kicked in to defend itself. Like, that's just, it still blows me away. So actually, when the podcast and the show came out, did that kind of trigger your PTSD or anything?
Yes, it definitely did, because when you're looking at these shows, well, at first you're like thinking like, oh, it's TV. It's all like fluff and fun and everything's great. And I worked in production, and so I was excited to have something that was being made because it's like my ex was like, I want this script to be like, made. I want this to be made. I want to make this short. I want to do this. And then it's like, whoa, my life gets turned into a TV show. And I kind of like was like, well, I got you made. And then it hits, and then you're like, oh shit, that's my life.
Right.
And
I remember now, it sucked.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that happened in my life. Oh, and it didn't necessarily like happen like it did on the TV, but there's like, you're like, oh, this is about my trauma, not about like Gilmore Girls.
It's very different. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to go through every episode with my therapist at the time.
Interesting.
And process through what was triggering me. And I started to become scared of Eric Bana. So I had to, I actually had to meet him, and he doesn't know this, and he didn't want to meet me because he was like, how could I play this evil person and then meet this girl that like, has such a sweet soul. And then she had to do what she did, and it just like, it would affect his character that he had to play. So he didn't want to meet me either. But I needed to meet him to know that this wasn't John.
Mm-hmm.
This was a show. It wasn't my reality. And so I actually met him. I think they were filming like the last day. And I met him that day. And he came into the trailer to get his hair and makeup done and stuff. And I was there getting my hair and makeup done for, I was just like a background person. And he sat next to me, and I've worked on set before, and this is my show, so I can say hi to whoever I want, but I have been trained like you never say hi to an actor or actress. You keep it professional, like they're there to work and you don't bother them. So I was just there in the chair, like being all quiet and not engaging with him because I was taught not to engage. And then he like starts talking to me, and then that allows me to like talk to him. And that was so helpful in that moment. And then at the premiere, Cash was sitting on his legs, and he was just like putting his head up, looking at Eric Bana and just loving on Eric Bana. And that is the type of energy that John never got from Cash.
Right. So that kind of set your mind at ease a little bit.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Ah. So what do you think of the show? Do you think it was well done, or were you like, what the hell is this? This is garbage.
Well, when it's your show, you're always going to have a biased opinion.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, that character didn't play me like quite like I think she did. But a lot of my friends are like, oh my gosh, Julia Gardner like played you on point, Terra. And I'm like, well, I like to hear that because, it's someone's outside view of me. And I just always like, but no, I think Julia did an amazing job. I think all the actors actually did an amazing job. If I were to make it, I would probably make it a little different because I would want it like exactly how it was.
Right.
But in film and TV, that would be very hard legality.
Yeah. Was there any sex scenes? I didn't watch the show.
Well, definitely not with me. There was like a few with my mom, or like not my mom, but like Connie and Eric Bana.
Oh, okay, good.
And my grandma said she didn't like the show because of
that. Grandmas.
Yeah.
So now you have a dating course, you have trauma work you do with people, you do life coaching, and you have a podcast of your own. What's that? Yeah. What's your podcast about?
So my podcast is kind of on a hiatus right now, but I'm going to bring it back. And I just have to have certain goals for different times. And my goal during this time is to really work on my book and create that awareness. So once I get my book to a place where it's at least sold, then I'll bring back my podcast, because people don't understand podcasts take time, they take money, they take a lot of energy. And I got really inspired by this one person by listening to their podcast, Moving Past Murder. And this person is, we'll call your Landry. He is a person in the true crime space, but he was 11 years old and overheard his mom get murdered, and then was 12 years old and on the witness stand basically was a key witness that put his dad in jail. And he's created like this podcast, he's created this documentary, and I was on it, and on the podcast, not the documentary, but I was on his podcast and just so inspired to like level up with my podcast, because I never like thought of a podcast being edited like a show. And
Right.
just like the way that it's edited, I like how he's edited his podcast. So I want to like kind of do more alignment towards like that stuff and make it just a little bit more production value higher, if that makes sense.
For sure. How many episodes of Time Out with Terra do you have right now?
I think I have like 44 episodes.
Oh, okay. So people can still listen to your old episodes. Okay.
Oh yeah. And they're out there. There's a lot of great guests. I just want to do it better when I get to the place where I want with my book, because I feel like I'm not done yet doing the things I need to do. And I have a lot more potential, and I've been lazy.
Are you still a stoner?
I'm a little bit here and there, but I'm really trying to, if I do want to take a hit, I've been smoking since I was 17. So if I do want to take a hit, I really try to lean into why I want to do that before I even go into that action.
Very good. Well, does that stop you from doing it once in a while? Why you want to do it? Or you're like, okay, that's why, and then you just do it?
Well, I don't drink anymore either.
Okay.
So I feel like I have to have a vice somewhere. And at least if I'm not overdoing it and I'm able to hold myself accountable with it, I'm able to have that in my life. But if it gets to the point where it is really not bettering my life in any way, then that's the time to get rid of it.
Gotcha. Good. So what'd you learn about yourself through this whole mess?
Everything. I'm like, from that point, my life has been an ongoing learning, just healing journey. And I'm just so happy to have that, because man, knowledge is power and knowledge is great. And just hearing other people's experiences, and the knowledge changes every day. So like listening to a podcast like this and hearing people's experience, I think is so important. I at least try to listen to a podcast a day.
Me too. I absolutely love podcasts. I love podcasting. I get to meet cool people like you. It would just be nice if I could make some money on it.
Yeah. I'm Terra Newell, and you're listening to Bunny Hugs and Mental Health Podcast.
Be sure to subscribe and to like this video. You can listen on Apple Podcast and Spotify. This is Todd Rennebaum saying, make your beds and take your meds. Keep watching for more interviews with incredible people telling their stories of resilience and adversity with mental health and mental illness.